Well, guys, the plot is thickening and the Rayburn family just keeps unraveling. Hey guys, Cameron for Bloodline, Season 2, Episode 2, Part 15. I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I really did enjoy the first episode. I thought it was a really great premiere overall. A bit long and a bit slow, but I definitely really did enjoy it. And I thought this episode was actually probably on the same level, but I don't think it was as good as the premiere. I definitely will say that. For me, this episode was very slow, and it was shorter than the premiere, but it was quite slow. And that's something with Bloodline that isn't a problem. It's just something I need to get used to. I've heard it before that this show is so slow that you could walk out of the room, get something to eat, and you could come back and you'll know exactly what's going on. Yeah, that's entirely the show the Bloodline is. I mean, conversations go on for too long. This episode perfectly does show that. But the thing about this, story for me is that everything that's going on is so interesting that I can't help but watch. And that really is the thing, is that while the show is slow, it's not at all boring. It's just slow and sometimes can get a bit degrading and kind of just, it's slow, it's not boring. It's definitely not. Boring is not the word for this. What the word is, the word's not boring. The word's just kind of slow and sluggish, but that's just how the show is. But let's just get into this episode because there's a lot to talk about, and I definitely am really loving the direction this season is heading. And definitely you can tell that basically, things are, that basically for the Rayburn family, things are just getting, all these secrets are starting to come out more and more definitely as the show goes on. So we start off and we see this flashback of Danny. We see that Lowry and his wife have this image of Danny, and Danny tells him quickly he has no plans of killing them. He tosses that tape that screws John in so many ways, and in the present we're back with John and Lowry, who explains that he hopes now that John is going to drop this whole pesky investigation thing, because obviously John now knows what's on that tape, and the fact that there was nothing on the tape that was connected to Lowry and everything, and John tries to lie that Danny was totally lying, and, of course we know that that's a lie. We know that Danny definitely was not lying, but Lowry calls that bluff and says, sure, we'll see. He can tell that John is lying. He definitely, I like that Lowry is a step ahead of John, that he's not really believing what John is saying, because no, it doesn't really sound believable what he's saying. It definitely does not, and I like that, John, that Lowry is not believing John. I definitely do like really seeing that. I think that's something I really am enjoying, and I think it's really good that he's kind of on the same level. So, John white knuckles it out of there, thinking that Danny has managed to hold him from the grave. He sees the old Rayburn truck, and he literally just starts snapping and smashing as much as he can. It really does show how John is slowly starting to lose it, and I know eventually he's going to start seeing visions of Danny. He's not yet, but you definitely get the sense that he's going to, and, it's really crazy, because you can see that he really wants to murder Danny, but Danny's, of course, already murdered, and the way that, even though Danny's dead, definitely the presence of Danny is not gone. You can definitely tell. So, he comes home, Diana's there, she's wondering why he's there. John goes, he goes to take a drink instead of talking to her. She says they need to decide about whether he's running for sheriff, and he says that he already made that decision, that she really isn't making that decision for him. He's running, and she stays pretty patient considering she tells him he's been AWOL since Danny died and that she's very worried about him because of it. And honestly, I like they're giving Diana a lot more to do here. She's not just some annoying wife. Really, you can just see she's very concerned with John. Obviously, John's acting very secretive, and she's worried about them as a family too. He distracts her by making out, and they're uninterrupted by Nolan creeping around because creepers gotta creep. Now, Nolan doesn't have as big a part in this episode as the last episode, but definitely Nolan still plays a big role here, but he's just watching them making out. It's really weird, especially because you don't know what his motive is, and the other Rayburn kids you can see aren't doing so great either. We see Kevin's continuing to do a lot of the coke he shouldn't have, and he's screaming fuck at his own reflection. Very weird scene. Meg is without work. She's driftless in her apartment. She goes to her mailbox, surprised by Alec, who she apparently has been blowing off. Now, we know that Alec was the reason she went to New York, that he wanted her to go to New York, and now it seems like her and Alec, things aren't as good between them, and she's been blowing him off, and he's talked to her boss, and he agrees that she should go home, which she flips out about to the point where he starts to leave, but she's smart enough to realize that there's a really good way to spend her afternoon. She seduces him upstairs, and basically you can tell that these two, they aren't having the best relationship, but they're kind of like ignoring the problem, which is very interesting. So John and Diane to meet with a potential campaign manager, and all of this sounds really exhausting, and Diane's very wary here. This dude, this guy tells him pretty much what we already know, that Danny's going to be a tough thing to get around during the race. The fact that, Danny died and John running will open the entire Rayburn clan to a new level of scrutiny, and they don't really know if they're ready to face that because they just, of course, had this loss. And that's something I really do like about this season, that's taking place directly after last season, so they haven't really had time to grief about Danny because it literally just happened, and they don't know if a campaign is really what they need, because we know, of course, everything that goes into a campaign. We know how hard that can be. I mean, look at what's going on with, like, Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of shit going on with them right now, and I like that they kind of related that here. And they don't really need all of this, more drama than they already have, because they already have so much going on. But really, I mean, that's kind of what they want, and, they're really exhausted by it. But you can tell that John really wants this, despite the fact that everyone's telling him, look, this is going to be really agonizing, and it's not going to be fun for anyone. So Belle has a job at some upscale boutique. She smiles at Kevin as he flip-flops, and she managed to sell something expensive to a rich guy. Sets up a meeting for Kevin to talk real estate, and I like that Belle's really trying to help Kevin, because obviously she can tell he doesn't really like boats anymore. He's clearly trying to change jobs, and at John's work, Marco has found more gas cans, not the gas cans again, thinks that Lowry is looking to get his business running again, basically, and, we see there's a call for them to check out some guy harassing a waitress, and when they get in there, it seems the waitress Elena Cortez, who is this girl, didn't call them yet, and it was the other guy, who is the grieving father whose daughter was killed in a Lowry human smuggle gone wrong, and he and Marco talk in Spanish, and it turns out that he thinks the girl, that Elena is all tied up in the smuggling, that she is all connected to this, and that something is going on with Elena, somehow she's involved here. He says a beau's about to come in, and it's the same people, and John is saying, they just need to let us do their job. Marco is excited to bring the waitress in, but John drags his heels, and of course, we know why. Again, because John's trying to not admit that he is the reason why Danny died. And I think he's doing a good job, but you can definitely tell that he's starting to have a hard time keeping that inside. I mean, even in episode 2, he's already having a hard time keeping it inside. You can definitely tell. So I did like seeing that overall. Things are already getting really tense there between John and Marco, though, because Elena lawyers up pretty fast. We see John calls Meg, fills her in about how bad things are going, and, he's saying to come home, basically, here's what he says, I need you need to be here, and he's getting really bossy about it, but I like that Meg is isolated from everyone, and it really is kind of this change of pace for Meg. The fact that Meg isn't with them, I think is really interesting, because everyone else has to deal with this. Meg has to deal with this away from all this. She doesn't get to really talk to anyone face to face. She has to deal with this away from everyone, and I feel like she's not necessarily regretting New York, but now it's really starting to hit her that she's away from everyone. She can't really do anything about it, that she's now left, and basically that's what's happened to her, that she's left, and it's sad to see, but that's basically what's happened with Meg, that she left and everything, and it's interesting to see the way that all went down, but basically he feels around how bad things are going, and basically you can tell that Meg's, she's saying, look, I want to stay here, this is where I am, you're not going to tell me what to do, and I like that Meg is staying very strong, she's not listening to Kevin, because in other shows, you would have someone just come over. I do think that Meg's eventually going to get back to the Keys, because, that's where her home is, but right now, she is happy, she's in New York, and I think she's going to stay there for a little bit. Now, how long, I don't know, but I do feel eventually she is going to go to the Keys again. So in Miami, we see Kevin, and basically he's on a party boat with some gray-haired rich guy who seems kind of into him in his shipyard, and Kevin, in fact, seems to be crushing it. That is until the guy asks to see a business plan, and of course, Kevin does not have that. He goes to the bathroom to do some coke and yell at himself, and the guy comes in and says that he likes coke too, so Kevin lets the stranger have some, and it turns out this coke is extra good, and the stranger offers to buy some, gives Kevin a new nickname, Frosty, which is very interesting, and I think that's Kevin on cocaine, basically, so we can call him Frosty now. So Sally goes to Danny's place in Miami. She walks through his home looking at his papers, wondering about this black sheep son who went so astray, because obviously something happened to Nolan. She knows about Nolan. No one knows that she knows about Nolan, but she definitely does know about Nolan. And on the fridge is an article about how great Danny's restaurant was. Lenny is there too, tells Sally that, we see that Potts is there, and tells Sally the landlord remembers John being at the house, which that is a big part here, because now Sally knows that her own son was at this house and clearly did not tell her about it. And that's something that eventually I think she's going to get very upset about. She's not upset yet, but she's going to get very upset about. You can definitely tell. So Meg is back at her old place. John meets her there. They talk about the potential fallout from witness tampering. Their mom paid with personal checks, and Carlos had him sign over the check. What does this mean? It basically means the Raybers can be seriously screwed, and as usual, John tells Meg the deal, but not really. He doesn't, for example. He tells her about the tapes that Danny made, but does let her know the general direction that the general direction that things are heading, that they're basically headed for shit, and there's nothing good that can happen to them because of that. So things really aren't good for the Rayburn clan. You can definitely tell as things are going there. So Kevin is also in dire straits. He still tries to put up a good front for his worker pal Jake, but Jake tells him that he's out, and he can tell that Kevin is not in a good state. Kevin begs, Jake is sympathetic but firm. So Kevin leaves. He spirals down harder. He texts his old friend to the boat and says it's frosty, you still want snow, and it's just, you can really tell that Kevin is headed for this downward spiral that I don't think any of us really are looking forward to seeing, but it's definitely interesting to see. And Norbert Leo Bus is such a good actor with that. He definitely did a really good job there, and especially with us seeing that he feels like he is okay, but we know deep down that Kevin really isn't okay. This is his way of really hiding his grief and really getting to not see him deal with things, which makes sense that none of them are really outright dealing with this because they don't really want to deal with this. They kind of want to move on with their lives, and they can't really move on with their lives. I mean, Danny's death has really affected them, and they can't really move on because of it. So John goes to see Potts, and he drops it fast, starts telling Potts what a mistake it was to give Danny those tapes, and Potts is saying that he hates to differ. You can tell that Potts, again, really suspects John of something. We don't know what it is, but John goes on to be saying, take your deal elsewhere, why don't you leave my family alone? But Potts is not going to stop, obviously, because he does leave, but he goes to Sally. He tells Sally all about Nolan, and she has a great restraint to not be like, she knows exactly what's going on, and she asks what Nolan knows about them as a family, and it's just so sad. I feel Sally's the character I feel the worst for because she's the one that really knows nothing. She knows nothing that's really going on. She thinks she knows what's going on. She knows pretty much nothing. She doesn't know the half of it, and it's very sad to see. I really do feel bad, for what's going on between those two, definitely. It's very sad to see. I really do feel bad for Sally, and out of all the characters, Sally's probably the one that I feel the worst for. I mean, all the characters definitely, but Sally definitely, I mean, she knows nothing, and she thinks she knows what's going on. She thinks this is all about Nolan, and it's really not all about Nolan. It's obviously more than that. It's about, what's going on with Danny, how Danny was connected to all this. She doesn't even know that her son is dead, though, which is sad to see, but Meg's boss, we see, is happy that she's got her head together and everything's good. She's saying, okay, you took some time off, and she's already asking for Meg's return. Meg is startled by an unexpected appearance from Carlos. He wants to know what she wanted, and she begs him to talk to John, because clearly something is going on with him. He wants something with their family. What it is, we don't know, but Meg obviously wants answers, and she's going to try to get it through John. So John and Marco track down a judge who's just minding his business fishing. They ask for a warrant, and the judge is saying, beat it, I'm fishing. And Sally comes downstairs to find Nolan, and she watches him, and you can see that this boy is so much like Danny. And again, it's partially because the boy that plays Nolan also played young Danny, but also because Nolan really resembles Danny. Nolan is very edgy. He trashes Danny at every chance, pushes Sally's buttons, saying that his dad liked the dead one the most regarding Sarah, and it's crazy because, yes, we do know Danny. The thing is, he's not wrong. Danny did have a connection to Sarah. That's part of the reason why Robert did not like Danny, but why the fuck was Robert sending this money to Nolan doesn't make any sense. And why was he saying it to Evangeline? What was that all about? We still don't know. We hear nothing about Evangeline in this episode. I'm sure we will eventually, but nothing about her here. Sally, who has some experience with difficult Rayburn, stays patient yet, though, and she doesn't take no guff, and, she's really not, she's not being, she's not really saying anything to Nolan. She's just letting him talk, basically, and I like seeing that. So Kevin is waiting to make, Kevin, or Frosty as he is right now, he's waiting to make his drug deal. He's surprised when some other random, not from the boat, shows up, but considering he's a novice, he seems to have thought this one out. There's a complete transaction involving sugar packets and pies, but it all seems to work, and he walks out with a ton of cash, and it seems like this is where Kevin's headed. He's going to be a drug dealer, and that's really interesting. It's exactly not what Belle wanted, because Belle, of course, got him the real estate job, and now it seems like Kevin's going to be a drug dealer in this name Frosty, which is definitely interesting, and definitely could end up getting things really bad for Kevin. In fact, I'm predicting right now, Kevin's getting arrested by the end of the season. I definitely think that's going to happen. So John goes to this very dark street to talk to Carlos, and someone has got to Carlos, though. He's spinning all sorts of lies about Meg. He's clearly been put up on someone else's payroll, and Carlos keeps yelling the whole family was in on it, which we know isn't true, but he then jumps into someone else's car. We don't know whose car it is, but this is really bad as we can tell. Jonathan tells Meg what's going on. They're in trouble. Carlos can provide motive. He still has to play cop, though, when he gets a call from Marco, who's excited because, of course, they know what's going on. But Marco's all excited because they're getting a search warrant for Elena Cortez, and he tells Meg he can't not pursue it, and he can't tell Marco to back off. What is he to do? Now, we know that Marco really isn't Meg's problem anymore. The fact that he's talking to Meg about this, I mean, that's the thing. He's not really her problem. They broke things off. Meg isn't really involved with Marco anymore. But, obviously, John's trying to get answers there. He figures it out while they go on the search. He tells most of the other detectives to go outside so he can look at things himself. This plan looks like it might backfire when the cops outside find a shed, but no, he finds a picture of Elena with Rafe, who was murdered last year, and there's a link he was worried about. He thinks for a second before pocketing the picture, and you can definitely tell that, he's thinking about something. He's definitely thinking about framing Elena, because obviously framing Lowry's not going to work. Framing Elena, that could work, and I feel like that's really what John's going to try to do. He's going to try to frame Elena, and then we get this awesome scene. I loved this final scene with John. He's charmed the crowd. He tells a story about life at the inn as a young boy and the time he broke the one big rule. He went to a guest room. He fell asleep on the bed. He jokes about how mad Robert was, and Robert apparently said that he's happy for him because every day after today he'll know the meaning of right and wrong, and he talks about the look of disappointment on Sally's face. We see other things too, like Elena giving an envelope to Lowry. Kevin gets a text for it, which is, we don't know what that's about, but she gives an envelope to Lowry, and that's very interesting. Kevin gets a text for Frosty about a dude wanting more pie, and then John officially announces he's running as sheriff. He rips up the picture, and definitely something is up with that. Now, what this picture is, he's ripped the picture. We don't know what's going on there. Something has happened with this picture. I mean, I'm sure that maybe the picture was inside that. We're not really sure, but that's how the episode ends, and I don't know, this episode was okay. I don't have a lot to say about it. For me, episode 2 was not as strong as episode 1. It was honestly just kind of slow. There really wasn't too much going on in this episode. There was stuff going on, but there just wasn't as much in this episode as the first episode. For me, the first episode was a lot more interesting than the second one, but I did like where this is headed. I liked a lot of stuff we did get here. I think it's very interesting what John's trying to do. Clearly, he's trying to frame Elena, but it seems like, once again, Lowry is one step ahead of him. Clearly, Lowry has his own plan, and what that is, we don't really know right now. And that's something I'm interested in seeing, is what exactly is Lowry's plan? How is Elena connected to this? Definitely something is going on there, and I feel like Lowry's going to be the one to find out what's going on. What it is, I don't know, but definitely I feel like that's going to happen, and I don't know what Lowry's going to try to do. But he definitely has something up his sleeve. We'll have to see what that is. What's going on with Carlos? Because obviously Carlos, something is going on with Carlos and Robert. Now, Evangeline's not here yet. Evangeline seemed like she'd be in the picture, but she wasn't even talked about in this episode. And I don't really know why she wasn't. I guess it was just because Evangeline's not a big part of this yet. I'm sure she's going to be eventually, but right now she's not a big part of this. We'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting. Nolan. Again, Nolan acting very shady. I don't know what's going on with Nolan. I can't even tell what this guy's motive is. Like, what the hell does this kid want? I don't know what it is that he wants. And, I can't tell. I think he's Danny's son. There's a part of me that feels like he's not, though, because the whole situation going on with him and Lowry, definitely there's something going on with that. The fact that he went to Lowry, definitely, I think, is interesting. So let's see what happens with... Actually, no, he went to Eric, so that's interesting as well. Eric had nothing to do in this episode, though, so that was really weird. I like that John asked Meg for advice, but again, Marco's not her problem right now. Marco was out of her life. She's with Alec now, but it does seem like she's not really with Alec now. I see Meg definitely leaving New York. Definitely, it seems like this episode shows she's going to do that. Let's see what happens with Carlos, because, we know their mom paid with personal checks, and Carlos had him sign over the check, and this really could be bad for them. What happened here with Carlos, is John going to be able to sort things out with Carlos? We're not really sure. That's going to be very interesting on what's going to happen there, because he really doesn't know what to do in this situation. Obviously, he needs to remain very low-key, but he really doesn't know what to do here. That's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Carlos. I don't really know what's going to happen with that. As far as Kevin goes or Frosty, it seems like this is the direction that Kevin's headed. He's going to be a drug dealer, which I don't really know how to feel about this. It's kind of a strange direction for him to go into, but that seems like that is exactly what he's going to be doing. I don't really know how I feel about it. We'll have to see what happens, I guess, as the episodes go on. Again, I don't really know how to feel about it. Definitely, that's very interesting. And then as far as Potts goes, Potts definitely does not trust a word that John is saying. You know, he knows that something is definitely up. He doesn't know exactly what it is, but he definitely knows that something is up with that family. And he definitely does not trust them, and we don't know what that is yet that he doesn't trust. We don't, I think he doesn't know really what's going on, but he definitely knows that her children are lying to her, and he's definitely wondering exactly what they're lying to her about, what's going on there. He wants details, and I don't blame him for wanting details. I mean, we want details as well. We want to know what's going on. Of course, we know what's going on, but he doesn't, and that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. I like seeing more of Diana as well, because you can see Diana's genuine pain for John. She really just wants to help him. Belle as well wants to help Kevin, but these two characters really don't have a say in things right now. The fact that John and Kevin, they're both dealing with grief in different ways. John dealing with it in the sense of running for mayor, and then Kevin dealing with it, I think, in the sense of becoming a drug dealer. Those are two ways they are trying to deal with it. As far as Belle and Diana, they're trying to help them out, but it doesn't really seem like it's working. For me, this episode wasn't boring, that's not the word, it was just very slow. Very slow, not a lot going on this episode, not too much interesting stuff. I think there was way too much investigation of, the investigation, I'm just not really into, for me. I mean, I understand obviously what they're trying to do, but for me, it's just not the most interesting thing. Overall, guys, as much as you guys saw this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Definitely, what do you think of the season so far? For me, I don't know if this is better than last season. I think last season was a bit stronger, but let me know what you guys saw of this season so far. I'm enjoying it overall. I will see you guys next week, which will be for tonight's episode of Game of Thrones, which obviously I'm really looking forward to, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.